Venerable Professor Samdhong Rinpoche, one of the most respected Tibetan scholars and Buddhist practitioners alive, was born Samdhong Losang Tenzin on November 5, 1939 in Nagduk village in Kham, Tibet. By the age of 5, he was recognized as the reincarnation of the fourth Samdhong Rinpoche and enthroned in Gaden Dechenling Monastery. Escaping the Chinese invasion in 1959, he continued his monastic studies in India, culminating with the awarding of his Geshe degree in 1970 at Gyuto Monastery in Dalhousie. Once in exile, he not only continued his studies, but he also served the Tibetan community in numerous ways, always working closely with the Dalai Lama. By 2001, and by his own admission, he set out to lead a reclusive life in order to begin his efforts for the cause of nonviolence. But he found to his surprise that he had been nominated overwhelmingly as a candidate for the Kalong Tripa, or Prime Minister of the Tibetan Government in exile, an office that he won with 84.5% of the popular vote. He continued in this office until 2011, when he was succeeded by Lobsang Sangye. On June 10, 2015, students from the University of Arkansas were fortunate to be able to hold a question and answer session with Rinpoche. These students in India with the TEX program, an oral history project that records the stories of the Tibetans currently living in exile in India, were led by Professor Sidney Burris and Geshe Thupten Dorji. The meeting occurred at Minyat Kongston, Drepung Losling Monastery in Mungad, India.
Welcome, young friends. I'm happy to see you all here in my own monastery. I received your letter about your visit to Dharamshala, but the dates are during your visit to Dharamshala, I will not be in Dharamshala. So, but just coincidentally, we reach here together. So it's good to have a chance to interact with you. But I have nothing to say. This kind of interaction is always difficult. Firstly, all of us meeting for the first time, I do not have an understanding of your interest, your aptitude, or your way of inquiring and what kind of things you would like to know. And secondly, my language skill is very poor. I cannot express myself very properly in English language. So sometimes it's very difficult. In spite of that, to meet people, even silently, there is some different way of communication if you have a proper intention. So with that assumption, I'm here. So I think you start what you would like to discuss or to know or to question. All of you welcome.
First of all, thank you very much, Rinpoche. I first came to India in 2007 with Geshe Dorje, and I came to see if it would be possible to bring our students here on a trip. And I was sitting in a restaurant in Majnikatila in New Delhi, across the table from a Tibetan man who was very old, and we had a translator. And this Tibetan man started telling me his story about growing up as a nomad in Tibet, and then leaving Tibet in 1959. And he told this long story. And the first thing that occurred to me was that I wish I had a camera to record his story. And then the second thing that occurred to me was I would like for my students to come and to be able to hear the story that this old Tibetan man had told me, because one of the things that he told me was that even though he had given up his family and his way of life in Tibet, that he had no animosity toward the Chinese. And I went back to the University of Arkansas and put together a program that we call the TEXT program, which is an acronym for Tibetans in Exile Today. And our purpose is to come to India and allow our students to bring their cameras and to sit down with the elderly Tibetans and record all of their memories of their lives in Tibet, to record all of their stories about the passage over the mountains down into India, and then to take these stories and give them a permanent place, a permanent place on the internet, where the whole world can go and hear these stories. At the same time, Geshe-la and I, at the University of Arkansas, where he teaches now with me, are teaching a class in the history and the literature of nonviolence.
I see.
Now, that's the story, the backstory. My question is, one of the problems that we confront in America when we try to teach nonviolence to American students are basically two. One, we live in a country that is extremely militaristic, has a very powerful military, and seems continually to be at war in one way or another. So nonviolence is viewed in America as a subject of not very great importance. The second problem that we have is that, as you know, there is in our country a strict division in our Constitution between the state government and religion. And so in the classroom, we often teach, Buddhist principles of nonviolence. And we try to teach them without teaching Buddhism, because we live in a country where that would not be, where we might get into some difficulty for doing that. So my question to you is, do you have any suggestions for us as to how we might approach the subject of nonviolence in a country that is continually at war, and in a country where nonviolence is closely associated with Asian religions and is therefore, viewed as a potential problem for Christianity because it's so associated with Asian religions?
It's a very huge question. I don't know what to say. I do not have a very pre-prepared answer. The requirement at the very beginning is we have to find out what is non-violence, to define non-violence. Among the various religious traditions, philosophical traditions, and also in the different cultural traditions, there are many different ways of defining the non-violence. And unless and until you have a clear, understandable, and verifiable by the common sense and logic what we mean non-violence. And the second, the separation of state and church, which lead to or which produces the concept of secularism. And that secularism also, there are so many different ways of defining what we mean secularism. Mao Zedong or Karl Marx, they would interpret secularism means anti-religion, anti-dharma. And dharma is unnecessary, religion is unnecessary for human well-being. Rather, it is a hindrance to human well-being and human development. So therefore, the dharma must be not only separate from the state, it has to be completely eradicated. Mao Zedong's cultural revolution was aimed to that, to wipe out all kind of tradition or ancient thing from the mindset of people. Even the symbolics, monuments, they should also be destroyed so that nobody can have a sight of something old. There are different way of interpreting secularism as put the dharma separate from the state management, and the state will not have any particular dharma or religion as state religion, but individuals are free to practice, promote, discuss, study any kind of religion. There will be no problem. But state-owned educational system will not teach religion as such. And the third kind of interpretation of secularism, particularly by Mahatma Gandhi, he would say, Sarva Dharma Sambhava. We have to equal respect to every religion, but when it comes to practice, individual can choose one religion to his or her practice. Otherwise, no one have the right to evaluate or differentiate between religions. Each and every religions are equally sacred, equally holy, and equally respectable. But for the purpose of practice, the individuals. Then he is of the opinion that even the secular state does not have any religion, should allow all the educational institutions to teach Dharma, to teach religion, but not compulsorily imposed, But the students as willing to learn Dharma in the school, why should deprive of that willingness? So there are many different approaches. That is just casually referring to. Now, no violence is not taught by only Buddhist teaching. In the ancient India, if you look to all the 6 different philosophical traditions and 5 different religious related philosophical traditions, they talk about non-violence with certain limitation or with certain qualification. The Jainas and the Buddhists, these are 2 traditions, they talk about non-violence as a universal principle. And there's no room or there's no possibility to accept or allow violence as appropriation. The other tradition says when there is necessary, you have to undertake violent action for self-defense, for the defense of community, for the defense of Dharma, so on and so forth. You can kill, you can undergo war, so on and so forth. But the Jain and Buddhists, these 2 traditions of India, under no circumstances the violence is acceptable. But again, they would interpret violence and non-violence on the basis of mindset, not on the basis of apparent action. Even taking life of some person with completely free from hate and anger and from the intention of intense compassionate mind, even the killing act can be a non-violence. So these are long debate. And again, coming back to the Buddhist tradition, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, for last many years, he classified Buddhist knowledge into 3 categories: Buddhist science, or science in the Buddhist literature, and Buddhist philosophy, or philosophy within the Buddhist literature, and Buddhist Dharma. And he jokingly used to say, Buddhist Dharma is only for the Buddhist people. The non-Buddhist has nothing to do, you have no business to enter into the Buddhist Dharma. Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist science, it's common to all, even to the non-believers, all other religious traditions, and even to the non-believers. The scientific knowledge which is contained in the Buddhist literature and the philosophical knowledge which are contained in the Buddhist literature is open to everyone. Even also Dharma, Buddha Dharma, the religion is not a sacred, it's open. Everybody can know. But if you are not going to practice it, just knowing is unnecessary. That knowledge will not help you. The philosophical knowledge, it can be useful to you, not related to the Dharma. And the scientific knowledge also useful to you. But the knowledge of Dharma, if you are practitioner, then it will be useful. If you are not practitioner, then what is the use? We have to find out what is relevant and what is useful, utility. Without utility, there's no value. Dharmakirti have said jokingly in this Pramanavartik, the Buddha knows how many insects are living in the ocean, but that knowledge has nothing to do with me. It doesn't help me. He might be knowing it. The simple trans bangina karen yakume. What I need is his knowledge and the teaching of the what is to be practiced, what is to be avoided, in order to purify and get enlightenment and get out of the bondage from the samsara. Now coming back to how to approach to the subject of non-violence in a society which is by and large influence of the perpetuate custom or habit of violence. I know it is difficult, but anyone whose mind is rational, who is free from any blind faith, then he or she can analyze, evaluate between the violence and non-violence. By that evaluation alone, you can understand whether the non-violence is something useful or it is absolutely useless. For inquiring into this field, we need a sharp mind, patience, and it will take a lot of time, and it shall have to be applied on various ways. And particularly, I think at this moment, when we teach non-violence, Gandhi, Vinoba, Martin Luther King, and before that, Thoreau, these people's literature are very important because they are talking about non-violence is not for the sake of spiritual practice. They are talking about non-violence in the social, political, economic life. So that is directly related to us in these days. I always used to say the greatest contribution made by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was to brought down the non-violence practice in his national freedom struggle, in his political life, in his socio-economic life. Non-violence was taught by all the ancient teachers, by Buddha, by Mahavir, in a great length and extensively. But they are always talking the non-violence in the process of spiritual journey. They never specifically taught us how to use non-violence when you are conflict with your opponent. You are being facing an immense injustice by someone, oppressors or dictator or something, some your opponent is doing immense injustice to you, and how you can respond it non-violently. So therefore, Gandhi, Vinoba, Martin Luther King, these people are very important, and through their socio-political work and their concept of non-violence, which is not different from the spiritual concept of non-violence. So we can talk about this absolutely in the question of modern question of facing the challenges of the modernity, in the question of equality, in the questions of social justice, in the questions of individual right, so on and so forth. So where, how non-violence can be adopted or can be used for solving any kind of conflict or problem or challenges which are facing day in and day out by us. I basically used to ask people, someone does violence to you, how do you feel? Do you feel okay? Do you feel very agitatedly? Or do you feel it is okay? So if you examine yourself, how you feel someone commits violence to you, and by that way, when you do violence to others, how they would feel, you can infer, you can understand, as you feel, the same way the other people will also feel. So by that way, any kind of violence act can never be welcomed by anyone. Entire sentient being, not only the humanity, even the smallest insects, their basic nature is seeking pleasure and not wanting pain. This is equal to everyone. No one is seeking pain and not wanting pleasure. Happiness is wanted by every sentient being. Unhappiness and misery never wanted by anyone. That is common to all. Now, the actions we can examine, what kind of action can give or can earn happiness and pleasure. What kind of action cannot give or earn or cannot manifest happiness and pleasure, so that you can analyze, that you can find out on the ground reality. You will not find any kind of violence act which would be bring you satisfaction, happiness and pleasure. If there's need to earn a pleasure and happiness, or need to give pleasure and happiness, your action need to be a non-violent one. This is not a secret, or this is not a, a need to be established through so many experiments. You can see it directly. And some people accuse the doctors impute your legs and hand in order to save your life, and that is very violent. But that violence brings you happiness, brings you the continuity of life. But again, here, this is not a violent inputting a part of your body by daughter is not outcome of anger or hate or intention of harming you. It was done out of compassion and out of love, if not even just for sake of their own profession. Even without love, without compassion, they do it without hate, without anger. A daughter is performing the operation just as his own profession. There's no attachment, there's no love. Yet it is sure there's no hate and there's no uh, anger. So therefore, this kind of acts cannot be considered as a violent. So violence and non-violence is not determined by the nature or by the face of the action, but it is to be judged from the intention and motivation, the mindset, and the result. So by that way, action can be judged what is violence and what is no violence. Since you don't want violence, and since you don't able to solve any problem through the violence means, then how we can just attach to the violence action? If we look the entire world history, novel world history, there have been endless wars and violences. But those wars and violences never solved a problem permanently. It might have deferred some problem, uh, subsided some problem, but the seed of problem is always there. Whenever an opportunity comes, the seed again revives and the problem will come. So we have to take cases. I don't know whether you have read Jan Shop's books, and he have given so many case studies. Yeah, so many case studies. By violence means what was able to achieve, and by non-violence means what was able to achieve. So these case studies are very useful for examining the power and the effect of non-violence action and the violence action. Coming to a very small example, I and some other person have a disagreement, and that disagreement is perpetuated and it become a conflict, and we two people have become enemies, and either I kill that or either that person kills me and one person's life lost. But after even taking the life, the other person do not feel the complete victory or a kind of ending the conflict, because I am also a human being. There would be many people related to me, and they will feel to take revenge. And there may be more people who take on my side. So therefore, he will not able to sleep happily without any fear or without any anxiety. On the other way, any one of the two of us says, "I'm sorry. We do not agree, but I don't wish to have a conflict with you. Let agree to be disagree, compassionately, friendly." The conflict ends there, and that ending of conflict is a permanent ending of conflict. It does not multiply that conflict further. So if you go in this argument, Shantideva's Buddhya Avatar, particularly its chapter on tolerance and then the chapter on endurance, there are so many examples and arguments that are being given. So I think this is a good approach, and it is nothing talking about spirituality or dharma or religion. It is talking a human behavior, and what kind of human behavior is more productive, and what kind of human behavior are counterproductive, which we can prove on the ground reality. Sorry, I'm talking too much. I was uh, trying to make a basis to go further into this inquiry. So this is my feeling.
Thank you, Rinpoche. I think, with your permission, some of our students might have
Of
some
course,
questions.
of course, they are the main people.
Exactly.
Please talk slowly because I'm not very accustomed to English language.
I'm a graduate student at the University of Arkansas.
Mm.
I study philosophy, and I am currently interested in moral education and how we go about that in a Western society to eradicate the traditional notion of Buddhism
Mm.
ignorance. So I have two parts to my question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The first part is, how do we go about teaching young children what is right and wrong?
Mhm.
What things are most important to teach the young children first?
Mhm.
And then my second question is, what method do we use to, when we're confronted with contradicting ideas from our surroundings? So we build this foundation of right and wrong, but then our surroundings tell us something different. So how do we prepare our students for that type of confrontation of ideas?
Difficult question. The concept of morality, ethics, and Shila, a kind of conduct, these are basically come out of one singular perception. But when it passes through different religious channels or different uh, genres of literature, even the language, there's a little bit of unsimilarity comes up, and then it becomes difficult to understand. So your first question, how to teach young children what is right and what is wrong. I do not have again any ready-made answer. You should teach like this by this method, because you cannot differentiate right and wrong like black and white, obviously different all the time. Right here, in this particular circumstances, might be wrong, some other place and some other time and space and circumstances. So no right and no wrong is inherently, there are very few things which can be considered inherently right and inherently wrong all the time, all the circumstances. So I am of the opinion that we cannot teach to the small children, very small children, what is right and what is wrong. You can only suggest, for example, a small children going to step on a small insect to kill. That children do not know whether the killing is right or wrong. Many people might tell their children, kill it, it is right, because inside house there should not be any insect, or there is mosquito, you must kill it. So in that way, killing is in that circumstances, in that environment, the child will consider killing is right. Or somebody else says, no, just like you, the insect has also feeling, also life, and to destroy that life is very bad, it's wrong. What we can try to inculcate children is a ability to discriminate or reason what is right and what is wrong. We can give the rational mind, and but by that rational mind, the children should able to decide for themselves what is right and what's wrong. And in that way, this teaching would be applicable to all the circumstances. Otherwise, at one time you tell their children right, the other time it might become wrong, or the wrong some other time it might become right. So therefore, we cannot go all the time for all the action what is right and what's wrong. So what I'm trying to say is that, for example, I put the example, a child is innocently trying to kill an insect. Instead of telling the child the killing is wrong, just ask question. If this insect is bigger than you and attack you, try to kill you, how you feel? Now you are big and this too small, you can kill it, but while killing, how that insect would feel, and what benefit will it give to you? This kind of argument, this kind of rationality, and once you argue with the child, the second time also the child might be able to argue by itself. And this is the beginning of rationalizing, not believing, but trying to understand will start. And what was the second question?
The second question was, how do we teach children what to do whenever other outside ideas conflict with what they've learned?
Conflict, yeah. I think for that also the answer is the same. Rational mind is the uh, the most effective instrument through which the conflict ideas can be compared, analyzed, and reached to a logical conclusion by child itself. Conflict ideas, one fact is an idea, opposite idea, one idea thinks something is right. For example, one idea of violence is indispensable for national defense, self-defense, so on and so forth. Violence is not a good instrument for anything. National security, violence is not indispensable. Self-protection or self-security, violence is not indispensable. There are many non-violence ways through which you can do all these objectives achieved. So this idea are completely opposite. Therefore, both of ideas can never be true. Since it is opposite, it must be one is right and the other is wrong. You can't say both of them right. So now how differentiate? The differentiation can only be through rationality, logic, and reasoning. There is again conflict of idea. Some other day, one scholar was talking with me. We cannot believe in the rational mind. Rationality, logic, reasoning, all are dependent on the conditioned mind. And therefore the conditioned mind lead you to give the result what you are predetermined. And all logic and reasoning goes with that your predetermined conclusion. So therefore to depend on rationality, so-called rationality, and depend on logic is also not correct, and it's not dependable. So that is a big question. But I choose to differ from his idea. If logic and reasoning is of an authentic one, it cannot lead you in a wrong way to your conclusion. So therefore, your analytical mind and your inquiry must not be in a haste. My late friend Jiddu Krishnamurti always used to say, "Sir, can you live with that question for some day, for some weeks?" To live with the question is very important. Not ending the question, not in a hurry to find an answer, not in a hurry to find a conclusion. At the end, by using living examples, cases, and also repeated experiments, we can reach to a right conclusion. And when you reach the right conclusion, the other idea is, then you can say it is wrong. It's wrong because this. Today, all these scientific principles, they are all come like that. They did experiment over and over again. And during those experiments, the 80% or 90% result comes similar. Then they say, oh, this principle is like that. So similarly, uh, when there is a complete idea, just to command this is wrong and this is right, the child might obey to that for some time. When the child grows up, or she or he has its own way of analyzing, and then they found otherwise, then they will lose the faith in the teacher, or they will lose faith in the literature. So instead of commanding, we just help the child in analyzation and make a joint inquiry with the child, and to encourage the child to think and to observe and to analyze in order to find a right conclusion. This is only way. Of course, this is not a quick way. What I am trying to say is knowing and accepting is a huge difference. Today in classes, the students 80% they are accepting by not knowing, but they think they know it. The teacher or the book says it is not, and without analyzing by yourself, you just accept it. In the Buddhist tradition, the hearing knowledge is borrowed knowledge, it is not your own knowledge. And by analyzing it, and you have your own knowing perception of that, then that's only your knowledge. So we have to encourage the children, the young ones, to have the habit and the ability to analyze, to inquire, to with a rational and a logic mind, and not hurry to find a conclusion, and not allow them just to accept, encourage them to try to know by themselves. Makes sense? Any other comments or questions?
Thank you so much for meeting with us today. I'm Elise, and I'm Native American from the nation. And we, my people, and Native Americans all over, have had our land taken away. And we've been given land by the government, and reservations, and our culture and our language have slowly been taken away from us. I've noticed many similarities between the Tibetan culture and my own. For Native Americans, the rate of alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide, and assault are the highest of any race in the United States. We are losing our traditional knowledge as the elders of our tribes are passing away, and we're unable to feed our own people. Many of the problems that Tibetans face today are very similar to the Native Americans, and I feel like I'll never truly know my culture because of how much knowledge that has been lost. I have seen the success of the Tibetan people here in exile. And I wish the same for my people. As a young person, that is concerned about the fate of my people. What can I do to help preserve my culture and secure a future for Native American culture? What can I do as a young person to help my people in the future?
I can very well understand your concerns, and this is very genuine concern every individual should have. And I do not know much of Native Americans, but I heard from some of the researchers the Tibetan people and the Native Americans do have so many similarities in their rituals, even their words of language, and their way of life, and some of the weapons, handmade weapons we use, so on and so forth. And perhaps they might have some karmic connection, past life karmic connection. Otherwise, the native Tibetans and Native Americans, I don't think apart continents have a common past life, so influence each other. That's not possible. One thing we have to accept is impermanence of everything in this world. No tradition, no cultural, no system is permanent. No way of life is permanent. It is in cycle. If you look to the world history, I don't know how many unknown civilization and culture have disappeared. But even the knowing history, there are a number of civilizations and cultures are completely disappeared. The Tibetans and the Native Americans, and for that matter, the native people in other countries as well, in Canada and Australia, they are also living in separate reservations. The Tibetans are similar. The Uyghurs and the Mongolians living inside China, all are passing through that phase. So the nature of the phenomenon, which is impermanent, it appears, it grows, and it becomes old, and it dies. So that natural cycle, except we can do anything, we cannot do. We cannot do anything to save it. But at the same time, to make an effort to save it is a sacred responsibility of each individual who born in that. As a person by birth a Tibetan, he or she shall have to do something to save the Tibetan culture and tradition. And similarly for Native Americans and whatever ethnic group he or she might belong to. There is a long argument in one of the Gandhi's book. Gandhi was concerned for Indian tradition and to work for the Indian nation. And at the same time, Gandhi believes that all human beings are equal. There's no difference between nationalities or ethnicity. And we shall have to work for entire humanity, not for particular nation. Accepting that principle, why Gandhi is working for India, he accuses himself. Then he says, I am not working for India for the sake of Indians alone. My thinking is universal. I wish to serve the entire humanity. But my service cannot reach directly to the entire humanity. I have to channelize my service through those people to whom I have access. I can reach to them. Then he says the English were think globally, act locally. A kind of um, reality. You are born and brought up from that ethnic group, and your first ability to understand and to work for is your own community. First your own family, then your own community. So therefore, you should not be think of your own benefits and achievements alone. Happiness of all human beings would be your objective, but you are not able to reach to all human beings. Whosoever is reachable, whosoever is effective before you, you shall have to work for that. And that is the service to entire humanity. Tibetan culture tradition is not only beneficial and important for the Tibetans alone. It is benefiting to Chinese as well and to entire humanity as well. Similarly, native Indians' culture is also a culture is always source of benefit to all living creatures, all sentient beings that need to be saved, not for the purpose of selfish end, but for the benefit of entire sentient being, entire humanity. And now the question, what I can do? This question cannot be asked to any external agent, to any somebody else. What I can do? First, one shall have to have the understanding what I should do, and thereafter what I can do. So this two question is to be decided by one's own, not to be advised or not to be suggested by from somebody else. To save and to preserve a cultural heritage, the first is to save within oneself. Culture is not an object which is to be displayed in the museums. The displayed in the museums are cultural expressions or cultural outcomes. Culture is within the humanity, within the mindset. So to understand one's own culture and to live one's own culture with pride and with satisfaction is the first step of protecting or preserving one's own culture. If that is proper, then dissemination of culture will become almost automatic. And whatever cultural expressions come out of that mindset would be the dissemination of the culture. Preservation and dissemination embodied in one person, that can do a lot. If one self is not able to leave that culture, and that culture is become an object of study, a part of history, then there is no way to save it. So therefore, definitely one can do is to live in that culture as one's own way of life. Then in the fast moving world, no culture is able to survive. Today, the uncultural modern civilization is also not static, it's changing each moment. So therefore, the cultural traditions are also, we cannot expect it to become static. But the essence of the culture need to be continued. So for that, one shall have to live in that culture. Today, there are two different options which are being adopted by many people. Among the Tibetans also, these two different way of thinking is going on. Many people think that we should not be exposed to the modern civilization. We must remain isolated. Tibet was remain separate and away from the modern civilization. They are able to preserve it first. But that is not very practical way. That's not realistic to remain away from the outside world, not to be exposed to the outside world. Actually, the reservations are like that, to be separated. That may be able to preserve the um, cultural and tradition within that confined condition. As and when it is exposed to outside or some outside influence comes in, then the whole culture shatters. Instead of that, right from the beginning, a person must be exposed to the outside. At the same time, that exposure does not affect to destroy its own culture and tradition. So this combination comes, then you are able to preserve the culture tradition. Again, I quote from Gandhi. Gandhi has said a beautiful thing. He said metaphorically, my room, I don't want to shut all doors and windows of my room in order to keep away the wind of outside to blow inside my room. I would like rather to open all doors and windows, let all the different winds of outside freely blown in my own room. But at the same time, I have one determination. My feet must not be blown away from the ground by the outcoming wind. So this should be our attitude. We must be exposed to all the outside world. At the same time, the outside world's wind should not allow to blow away your own culture, your own ground on which you are standing. And if that kind of ability could be achieved, then I think to preserve a culture and tradition is possible. Yes.
Tasha, in a lot of ways today, we're living in a an age of extremism, and you can definitely see that in the form of religious extremism right now. As a target culture, and also as a member of the target religion of this religious extremism that seeks to eradicate dissenters or people who disagree with it, and who goes to violent ends to ensure that eradication. What is an appropriate response as the target of this movement against you?
The first problem is I see and I believe is the deterioration of all the religion in this world is responsible for this kind of religious extremism. I usually used to say the expression which today commonly used, that is the religious intolerance. This world is just contradictory, inner contradictory. If someone is religious minded, he or she cannot be intolerant. If someone is intolerant, that is the biggest evidence the person is not religious minded. Religious mind and intolerance cannot go together in one person's mind. If you are matured in your religion, the tolerance is one of the qualities of each religion. I don't think any exception. Your mind is not matured, not evolved into your own religious spiritualism. You know only the religion by word, and it become your own property. Me and my religion. There is a solid me, and the religion is become not a spiritual part of you, but it is your possess your own property, and there's a danger to lose it. Somebody might have taken it away. So therefore, you lose your own religious mind, and at the same time you lose your tolerance. And similarly, the word religious tolerance is also very bad. I never use this religious tolerance. That is a disrespect to some other religion. Tolerance means I tolerate, this is to be tolerated. That means not acceptable, but anyhow you have to bear with it. So respect and tolerance is completely different. You must respect, not to tolerate. Tolerate is to something which is unacceptable. Acceptable is to be respected, not to be tolerated. But today the entire conditioning mind of the world population and its usage of language, they never touch to the basic cause of conflict and problems. So the best way to find a remedy religious extremism is to improve the study and understanding of each religion by its followers, and not only study and understanding, but to put in practice and to put in one's own real life, to become a religious minded. If someone is Christian, it must be a good Christian, a genuine, authentic Christian. practice and by way of living. A Muslim, it must be a very authentic Muslim. And to understand the scripture, its real meaning, not only the meaning of the letter, but the letter has not only the connotation of the word, but it has a spirit. We have to understand the spirit. If we only deal with the letter alone, even a Buddhist canon, there are so many Buddha's words which we cannot take in as literally. For example, there is a sentence in the Dhammapad: the father and mother both should be killed, and 2 Burmese, that also to be killed. If you kill all those, you will be free. So that is not the literal meaning is not the teaching of Buddha. I was discussing with one of the very senior and scholarly person of Islamic, and he was explaining what is meaning of jihad. And jihad does not mean to destroy or to violence to outside. It is a practice inwardly to your negative emotions. And he was quoting extensively from the Quran that negative emotions and mental defaultments against which you have to be act as jihad and to eradicate all the negative emotions. So what I mean is religious extremism, we should not understand that these are religious extremism. The extremism, all the extremist people are non-religious people. The religion should not be blamed. Of course, we cannot stop the extremisms. When some Muslim extremism is doing some wrong, or Hindu extremism is doing some wrong, we have to blame the person, the extremist person, not the religion as whole. They would say, I am acting exactly according to my religion, but we cannot we should not necessarily accept their version. And we must differentiate the religion from the person who is extremist. Extremist is a person. The whole religion is not a part of that person, so we differentiate the two. And similarly, not only that, similarly we have to differentiate the action and the actor. An extremist or any criminal, they are doing very bad thing and their action is to be condemned. But the actor is a subject of compassion, subject of pity, because the person is doing such horrible things due to his ignorance, illusion, and due to the so powerful negative emotions. So therefore, the actor is completely helpless and under the influence of something else. So when we deal with the extremist, we have to understand the religion as whole, or that religious community as whole to be blamed. We have to understand the actor of extremist alone is responsible for such extremist act. Then of course the sufferers shall have to react, but react non-violently, because all the extremist action are violence, and violence cannot be encountered by counter-violence. Violence act cannot be put to end by counter-violence. This is a very obvious thing there's some fire, putting more fire or putting more fuel will not extinguish the fire. Something opposite nature of fire shall have to be used for the extinction of the fire. There is a flood. Putting more water on the flood will never be stop the flood. You have to put some solid thing and cut off the source of the flood. And similarly, there's a violence. The antidote to violence is just non-violence. Violence, counter-violence, again counter-violence, there is no end. Violence is encountered by non-violence, then we can hope the end of violence.
Questions? Can you stand up? Can you name?
Yes, Lay.
Tashi Villa.
Yes,
I'm
Lay,
Sandra. I wanted to ask a follow-up question on the Gandhi quote that you said earlier. We are all growing up in a world that is becoming more globalized. We're able to see what is going on with people across the world more easily through social media and other ways via the TV. And I wanted to ask what advice you had in maintaining a path that is right for us and letting the exterior world not come into conflict with that. So allowing for the understanding of other cultures, but not letting it be a distraction to what is right for us in our path in life.
Can you repeat your question? I was not able to understand what is exactly you are asking.
Yeah. So I wanted to know
In this globalized world and so many social medias, then what is the question?
Yeah, I wanted to know if you had any advice for our generation and how to maintain a good path in life that is right for us and still allow for the, I guess, observation of other ways of living without letting it become a distraction or letting negative things come in that are not right for us.
Very good question. Technology, particularly information technology, is a two-edged sword. It has a very positive role and also it has a very negative role. But the positive and negative role are not played by itself. The actor, someone as a person shall have to use these technologies, and therefore you can use it in a very positive way or you can use it in a very negative way, and you can also in a neutral way. So that all depends on your own mindset and motivation. Having said that, what is the challenge, what is the problem of today? The modernity is so fast moving. It has only speed. It doesn't have any quality. And that speed carries us unmindfully, and we do not know what is our destination or what is our intention, where we are willing to go. What I mean, today we have lost the freedom of conscience. We do have all other freedom, freedom of property, freedom of life, freedom of speech, freedom of this, freedom of that. But we unconsciously, unknowingly, we are losing the freedom of conscience. And with that, we also lose the ability to think independently. Independent thinking and independent analyzation, this is a very essential quality for an individual's righteous living. At least one must have the ability to decide by oneself what is my need and what is necessary for me. Today the needs are not decided by the individuals. Individuals are already made consumer. We are no more person, we are just consumer. We are not no more user, we are just consumer. If you still remain as a user, we know how to use, what to be used, but we are just taught to consume. As much you can consume, you are a better citizen. And that is being taught to us through the method of comparison and competition. Right from the childhood, we are being taught to compare and to compete. And in the process of to compare and compete, we have lost one's own identity. We have lost the understanding of who I am and what for I do exist. What is purpose of my life? All these are being forgotten. We are just there to consume somebody's product, and that is being taught through the advertisement, by the print media, by the electronic media, the television, the internet. All the 24 hours, your brain is being bombarded by so attractive words and so attractive images and pictures and figures and so many things, slogans. So you have lost to understand what is my need and what is my greed. The understanding of need is completely destroyed. Only greed is being exploited as optimum possible. Exploitation is done simply through the compare and competition and the brainwashing of advertisements, entertainments and advertisements. So this is the real situation of today. So therefore, if possible, one must understand to lead a decent life, what are my indispensable needs, what are secondary needs. If I have, it's good. If I don't have, even I can go. And there's no third category of necessary which is not giving you anything positive for your righteous living. So this discrimination the power of discrimination, power of independent thinking, we must maintain it. And if you are able to maintain to that, you will not be carried away by the current of the modernity. You can have your own foothold, and on that you can stand, and on that you can survive, and you can benefit to others. If you have lost that ability, then you would be carried away wherever the modern civilization's current want to take you. Jiddu Krishnamurti used to tell people, he says that I know you cannot swing against the current. The flood is so powerful, you can never be swing against the current. The modernity trend, you may not be opposed or you may not go against it. And he says, but you still have the option to step out and stand on the shore, not left carried by the current. So, if you are not able to preserve your strength to swing against the current, and you must preserve the courage and determination to step out and stand aside. That is possible for everybody. Then one's own way of life is the greatest teaching and the greatest advice to others. So that will manifest, that will kind of radiate by itself, and it will help to many people. So I think that's how we must lead a life with mindfulness. Mindfulness means having ability to think autonomously, independently, not just blown up or just carried away by the force of outside. And what your own rationality, whatever you decided, that would be valuable, and that would be good for oneself, and that also good for others. And we must know that we are just not a consuming machine. We are individuals. We do have a consciousness, and that consciousness must be something higher than just consuming the things.
Next question.
I'm Hannah, and I was going to follow up with the modernity of social media, especially for, I feel, people my age and myself sometimes. With social media, there's this constant contact with people, and you constantly see what they're doing all the time. And for me, that it exemplifies attachment to people, and it exemplifies this fear of missing out on something and not being aware of the present moment that we are all in. And I was just wondering what would be the best way to fight that and to not have that attachment and not have that fear, and to understand that in the moment that we are in is the moment we're supposed to be in and the place we are supposed to be in.
Very good. basically attachment and hate, these two negative emotions, always come into our mind due to our ignorance of the self. In the English, commonly used English, they call ego, due to our egoistic way of thinking. Or if I strictly talking from the Buddhist philosophical point, the um, false conception of the self which conceived just opposite of how it really exists. So therefore, to understand the wideness of the non-existence of independent, inherent, unchangeable self. The self exists just designated by name and mind on many causes and conditions interdependently arising. So the principle of interdependent arising, unless you understand the basic essence of all phenomena which do exist interdependently and interdependent arising, the hate and attachment are difficult to avoid. But we can reduce them, we can control them, and we can regulate them by mental training. As I mentioned before, the social media is one of the powerful instruments to strengthen your illusion of the self and to reduce your understanding of the interdependent self. So this is quite obvious. And once there is attachment or hate, the fear is unavoidable. Fear definitely follows attachment or the hate, aversion. So therefore, to face the fear or to face the desire, its own face is more difficult. So we have to deal with its cause. It is a cause either would be attachment or the aversion or the hate. And that again causes from the ignorance. So there is chain of causality. This is a rather philosophical disposition to deal directly your question at very non-philosophical or ordinary level. Here I would again say, we as individual, our conscience and our mindfulness must not be surrendered before the attack of social media, or for that matter, any kind of modernity or modern civilization's force which would take in away our self-judgment or self-way of thinking, a discrimination between right and wrong, that shall have to be maintained. For that, whatever social media tells you, you need to question it, inquire into it before accepting. that is one handy uh, weapon. There is an advertisement, and usually we are carried away by the advertisement. The image is so attractive and the slogans are so catching. So when we see a such thing, we must not give up our analytical mind. You should examine the slogan, the connotation of the slogan. You can go through the image more detailed. If a very beautiful image, if you enlarge it outsize, then the reality comes out. Or it is reduced to small size, then it will also become ugly. And then again we should inquire what it has relation with me and why I should compete. I must achieve this and I must run. Particularly comparison and competition, as I mentioned before, is the greatest enemy of us. By competing, what will be the result and the end achievement? Competition means winner and loser. And become winner, but it will give you something better life. By loser, how it disturbs your mind and tranquility. Both sides, there can never be win-win. There always been lose-lose. Both sides, the winner and loser, both are in a race of competition, this loser. And similarly, by comparison means you taking for granted you does not have a unique individuality. Actually, each individual are unique, uncomparable. By comparison, you give up that uniqueness and you accept the commonality to be comparable. So that there is the time when we lose one's own identity, and losing one's own identity, then a lot of other things are followed. So therefore, if possible, we should always think each day, sometime, the principle of interdependence. And each phenomenon which is properly analyzed, then you would find the nature of interdependence. Understanding the nature of interdependence, you will also find your own uniqueness. That can restore your ability to independent thinking and your ability to discrimination the right and wrong, and thereby you will be able to use the social media in an appropriate way, and also you can avoid the fear and doubts. Unfortunately, my time is finished. Sorry, I have to run away at 11 o'clock. And thank you very much for your very nice questions and also patient hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.